All right, let's go ahead and get started. So hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday to you all. My name is David. I am the Director of Partnerships with Virtuous CRM. Virtuous is a nonprofit-focused CRM. Our whole goal is how do we help you create more personal, meaningful relationships with all your donors. And today we actually have a special guest, and we're excited to have myRollCall presenting today. Brian Kurth will be presenting. We're happy to have Brian talk a little bit more about donor-led fundraising events. Before we get started and I hand off to Brian, wanted to talk through a couple housekeeping items. So everyone is aware we are going to record the presentation. This will be available afterwards, as well as the details and the slides. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and watch. We also will have an open Q&A session at the end. If you would like to ask a question at the bottom of your little Zoom webinar window, you'll see a Q&A button. You can type your question there at any time during the presentation. We will see that. We'll save that towards the end and answer them live with Brian on the call. And again, if you have any other issues, you can always feel free to send notes through the chat screen. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian, and Brian will take us through the presentation today. So take us away, Brian.
Thanks so much, David. Hi, everybody. It's great being on board. We are, myRollCall team and I are very excited about partnering with Virtuous. And as we're talking about third-party, or some people call it volunteer-led events today, events led by your cheerleaders, your local evangelists in the town that just love your mission, your board members and the like, we also obviously work with staff-led events as well, and partner with Virtuous with those as well. So think of Virtuous as your wheel hub, so to speak, and then myRollCall is the fundraising event spoke on that wheel hub. So, and then perhaps the volunteer-led is a bit of a sub-spoke of that spoke, but we're getting pretty granular there with that. But the point is that we're going to be talking about third-party today, volunteer-led events, but just be well rest assured, we'd love to partner with you on your staff-led events as well, your big galas and anything, any other events that you do. So as David mentioned, please go ahead and submit questions along the way. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing with you what we know about third-party fundraising. myRollCall's been around now for a couple of years. We're a young company. But we've expanded greatly across the United States from the East Coast, and we've done a lot in Hawaii. We haven't done anything in Alaska yet. So if there's someone on the call from Alaska, we'd love to partner with you and do an event in Alaska. And we are unique in the marketplace in the sense of the event fundraising platforms. You've probably used Eventbrite. Perhaps you've used our friendly competitors at Greater Giving. Or something in between the two. And we really fit nicely where Eventbrite leaves off. They're great for ticketing, but if you start having table management or other needs, that's a little difficult for them to manage. And we, we're basically competitors with Greater Giving, if you've ever heard of them. So that, if you're not familiar with myRollCall, that's a little bit of a historical background. Most importantly, we're the only software out there with a specific module for third-party event fundraising. And we'll get into that more in detail in a little bit. But the point is that we've learned a lot over the last couple of years, and that's what I want to share with. So this isn't a product review. If you'd like to have a product demo, please let us know, and we can partner with David and his team and show you Virtuous as well. We're going to be talking about key learnings that we've garnered over the last couple of years with volunteer-led third-party event fundraising events. So what are they? They're hosted by volunteers, board members, again, people I mentioned before that are just simply cheerleaders in your community who just love what you're doing and want to help you out. They're organized by a volunteer, and they're attended, and this is the key, they're attended by the volunteers' guests. So the key there is you are expanding your donor base. You're bringing in new people into your community, your mission, and most importantly, you're tapping some new folks. And if you live in a smaller community, you might be struggling, you're constantly tapping the same folks. This is a method to tap some new folks. volunteer-led, third-party-led. Some folks call it DIY, do it yourself. Whatever you call it, it's a great way to add some fundraising, a new module, a new revenue stream for fundraising. Statistically, we approximate that about 1/3 of nonprofits are doing it today, but that's going to greatly expand. It probably will never be 100% of nonprofits tapping third-party events, and that's okay. It's not for everybody, but we're going to talk about how you can use it to bring in wisely, smart, means of new revenue. So what are some of the types? These are kind of the top 6 categories, but then we're going to talk about other forms, and then we're going to get into the details about why you should do it and the hurdles, the obstacles, and some of the boogeyman scenarios that do exist that you need to be aware of so that you don't get caught in having a bad third-party event experience. You don't want that. So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and everything in between to assure that you have fantastic revenue-generating third-party events. Some of the top 6 here: happy hours. Easy to manage. So your volunteer, they could host it at their home. They could host, if they own a bar or a restaurant, they could host it there. The key is the venue. You want to always reduce the cost of the venue to as little as possible with these third-party events. So it's good to know if you know a restaurateur, know a bar owner, or know someone with a really nice garden yard to host a happy hour. Or something very casual like a backyard barbecue. Those are very popular. Dinner series. We partner with nonprofits. There's a new client that does, I believe it's around 100 dinner series every year, where it's going from, it's not a progressive party, but it's, you buy tickets at the beginning of the year and you can pick and choose out of about 100 different dinners across the city. And you can pick and choose, 3 to 5, I think it is, if you buy a series of tickets versus just a single dinner ticket. Or you could do that as well. That's a great way to expand your fundraising levels. Sports events, we're going to talk more about that. Those are very popular. Corporate sponsorship events, more and more of these are happening. Why not tap, why just tap your corporate sponsors during your gala every year for their, in-kind or a donation that will get them a table at your gala? You don't want to stop doing that. It's an and. And why not ask them to host an event? You know who's really great about hosting events at their corporate space? Car dealerships. And every city has a car dealership, or 2 or 3 or 6. And, so it's fun because you're able to then go in and see the new cars coming out. So, and then that you're able to, meander around the showroom. So that's a popular one. And oftentimes car dealers are corporate sponsors at the galas as well. And then of course, performances. This does not need to be some huge event. We have a upcoming client who has a big gala that they're going to be hosting a well-known singer, as the entertainment. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a local singer-songwriter in the backyard and everything in between. So what are some of the favorite themes? These are just the list is endless, but this is, think of, I'm being a little bit of David Letterman right now. I love David Letterman. So this isn't my top 10. These are my top 20. I couldn't narrow it to 10 as the email invitation had implied 10. Well, I couldn't do 10. So you're getting 20. And I'll go through these really quickly. But Battle of the Bands, that's a really fun one. So for your music lovers in town. Comedy night, easy to do if you've got a coffee house. You don't have to have a comedy club in your community to do that. You could do it at a coffee house. Karaoke night, your local bar owner, if they have a karaoke machine, have them donate the space, have that volunteer, that organizer, that board member organize the karaoke night. Bowling tournament and golf tournaments are very popular. I will give you a heads up, however, that they can be expensive if you don't get the venue greatly donated or for free. So beware of that. And we'll talk more about some of the financial side to all this in just a little bit. Kickball tournament, who doesn't remember those big red balls? Those are always fun. Poker tournament, Texas Hold'em, what have you. Singer-songwriter night. These, as I mentioned, you can probably tell I'm a music lover, so I'm kind of, I have a penchant for those. Wine tasting, with the host being, if you're in a region of winemaking, then that can be difficult to do because they get tapped all the time, the winemaker to come out and do an event. But regardless of where you live across the country, chat with a distributor. They're going to come out with someone who will pour some wine and get some exposure. Pub crawl. If you're into, during St. Paddy's Day, that's kind of a popular item, doing an Irish pub crawl. Food truck party. Food trucks are more and more popular across the country. So now we're getting the foodie side of things here. Chili cook-off. Who doesn't love some good chili, especially in winter? Hosting a cooking class. Again, this does not need to be at a cooking school. It could be at someone's home if they have a large enough kitchen and can host something like that. Going back to happy hour, dog owner happy hours. They're oftentimes hosted at the local microbrewery, because they oftentimes are dog lovers themselves. And so then to have a dog owner happy hour, especially if the mission, if the nonprofit, the beneficiary is, the local humane society, that kind of thing. Okay, this next one is one of my favorites. I know it probably is raising a few eyebrows right now, but I've been to a couple of events and I've never laughed so hard. It beats some comedy nights, seriously, of average people in your community getting up and reading from their teenage diaries and journals. And it's not just women, more guys kept journals than what you think. And it is hilarious. You charge a $20 entry fee, and then you do a little paddle raise, so to speak, donations on the spot, one-time donations, or even monthly recurring donations on the spot. Bam, you've just had a phenomenal event. I can't recommend this one enough. I love them. I think they're a lot of fun. Fashion shows, of course, are a good old standard. They take a lot of work. So that's another one where before you embark, or a volunteer organizer embarks upon that, just know what they're getting into. If they work in the industry, it'll be a lot easier. They'll probably also have the venue. Talent show. Now we're getting into some things that are also kid-friendly. A talent show, haunted house, movie night, corn mazes. So those are my top 20, but there are many, many more. So who are your organizers? We've already kind of talked about this, so I'm going to skip through this pretty quick. But the board members, your trusted volunteers, your community leaders, small businesses or corporations willing to and wanting to give back and be seen giving back in your community. So they all have their own networks of folks that will then become potential donors for you. So again, expanding your donor base is what this is all about, as well as obviously bringing in more revenue. So who are they in terms of the age levels? I in no way want to come off sounding ageist, but obviously if you're targeting certain sectors within the community, because again, this is outside of your donor base, this is expanding your donor base. So if you have an aging donor base, you might want to start tapping the millennials now. They may not be able to give as much right now, and they might become like a monthly member, and they might not do a paddle raise at your gala for $5,000 today, but 10 years from now they might. So get them on board today. So you can kind of structure the volunteers. You kind of encourage them if they're coming to you for advice of what kind of event that would be the best fit for you, rather than them coming with saying, "I'd like to do this on your behalf, and I'm just going to run with it," whether it's a golf tournament or the journal reading or what have you. You can help guide them in this way. So be aware of where your holes are in your donor base, and doing volunteer-led events is a great way to then start tapping that donor base, the new donor base. Some not so boring statistics. I will not bore you with. This is the one page of statistics. So millennials prefer to donate in person more than any other generation. That's for real. That, you think millennials, they're at home, they're watching Netflix, they get this horrible reputation that they're at home at their parents' house watching Netflix. And that's just not the case. They really are an engaged community of folks, generation. and they really do want to be seen. And it's incredibly important for, as well as who they work for. So going back to that corporate donor, through a volunteer, a millennial, you might then also tap a corporation, and maybe a corporation that you've never worked with before, you've never received a sponsorship from before. Now, through that millennial doing that volunteer-led event, you might get that tech company on board as a corporate sponsor for a $10,000 table for your gala. So it's symbiotic is what I'm trying to say between your volunteer-led events and your galas and your larger fundraising events. Online fundraising is growing, but it's still only 7.6% of the $287 billion raised by individuals in 2017. So in other words, the GoFundMes and the like, it's growing for sure, percentage-wise, but people still want to be seen giving. They want to attend an event. They want to be with their community, is my point. In-person fundraising events total 10 billion plus annually. We did, that's based on some data from AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and we partnered with the UT Texas Venture Lab in Austin a couple of years ago as we were building out myRollCall. So, and that number is growing steadily as well. So, huge opportunity. So conventional wisdom, I'm sure, and there are some skeptics on this call right now, and there should be. You know, why should I do a third-party event? That's scary, you know, I have to worry about my brand. And I'm here to tell you, you're right, you do. We're going to talk about how you mitigate all that and tap in a positive way the new donor base through third-party and volunteer-led events. So the conventional wisdom is that small nonprofits have a limited staff and time to put on more than 1 or 2 events per year. So in theory, tapping third-party would really be great, right? It is, as long as those third-party events and volunteer-led events are not a drain on that limited staff. I had a conversation, excuse me, with a prospective client just yesterday afternoon about just this. She's very intrigued about it, about third-party events. But, you know, they're a staff of 2. They can't put on, you know, they can't really manage all that. Excuse me, let me clear my throat here 1 second. So meanwhile, the conventional wisdom is that large nonprofits tend to do multiple events throughout the year. And they just don't really need or have the time for third-party events. And I would say, well, they're leaving money on the table with that mentality. Again, you got to do it right, the third-party events, but you're leaving money on the table if you're not doing a few, especially using some of your vetted volunteers, namely your board members, who have a fiduciary responsibility to give or get. So if they don't want to just give a check or do something like that, you know, then they need to get it. And what better way to get it than to put on an event at their home or at their business or what have you. Third conventional wisdom piece. Active, engaged volunteers, board members, and community members want to support the missions of their favorite nonprofits. I keep using the word evangelist and not in a religious sense, but in a cheerleading sense. This is, you know, these are your people. This is your tribe. And it's a growing amount of folks. This is how you grow. This is how you tap. So third party is really critical for it. And economic impact. When a community gives where they live, it's powerful. They want to be seen giving, and especially in their local community. All right, the boogeyman slide. You knew it was coming, and for good reason, because as I mentioned, there are some skeptics on this call, and I get it. I totally get it. And I've heard a number of third-party volunteer-led event horror stories to know that this is true. So here's what you need to do. There are 4 key things that you need to cross the T's and dot the I's to make certain that any third-party event is a success. Number 1, protect your brand. Absolutely never say just an automatic yes to someone and send out your logo and your mission statement and a quote to a volunteer with whom you have no relationship and they just moved to town and they want to put on an event for you and you don't know anything about them. Don't do it. You've got to protect the brand. You know, focus on those folks that you already have worked with, those cheerleaders, the evangelists, the board members. Giving up control. Yep, there is giving up control. And we're going to talk about how you can do that. You can mitigate giving up control of the minutia of actually managing the event while still having oversight. There's a difference. Overburdening the staff with possible little return. Absolutely, this is probably the number one. Someone comes to you, and I have a sense that there are a lot of shaking heads, yes, right now. People come to you, they have such good intentions, and they say, we want to put on an event for you, and they do it, and then they're calling you and emailing you every single day asking, what about this? What about that? Can I get approval for this? And it just becomes more bother than it's worth. So be careful of that. And then managing expenses. You really want to have full oversight. You do not want to manage making the sausage, so to speak, of the events, but you do want to have oversight to those expenses, especially if they are asking you for reimbursement. That being said, myRollCall, just a really quick little sales plug, but we really help expand the donor base of more and more volunteers and their guest lists, because we enable the volunteer organizers to pay their event invoices, their fees, their venue, security deposit, their catering, that kind of thing, directly out of ticket sales and donations. And you have full oversight at a minimum, and at a maximum, you can even require them to ask you for approval before they pay any vendor. So that really helps expand the base. And it gives you the warm fuzzy that you need to make certain that it is a successful event and not a drain on your small staff. So why are they worth the risk? Opportunity to introduce your mission to a whole new audience, as we've talked about before. I mean, it's just critical. I mean, again, I'm going to reference the conversation I had yesterday afternoon with a nonprofit in northern Alabama, in a smaller community. And they were saying, we struggle because we tap the same people. So, it'd be nice to be able to reach out and to have a new donor base, addition. It's not an or, it's an and expand the nonprofit space of corporate, as we've talked about. And this is the third point that's really critical: expand your geographical breadth. In today's world, if the mission is the right fit, I do this personally. I support some nonprofits that are simply out of my physical region where I live, but simply because I really think they're doing great work, even within their own community. And I may be friends with someone who's affiliated, might be a volunteer organizer for an event. I may have attended an event in the past when I was in that city. So don't restrict yourself, in terms of we have X number of folks in our county, and that's our, service area. And that's true, but there are other folks outside of your service area who may be a great donor, and a great way to bring them in is through a volunteer-led event. So again, why are they worth the risk? Event expenses do not need to be covered by the nonprofit, for starters. That's certainly a way of doing things in the past, where the volunteer organizer eats their own expenses, so to speak. They're paying for the catering, they're paying for the security deposit, or they're asking you, the nonprofit, to reimburse them for that, which gets a little. It's like, well, again, why am I doing this as the nonprofit? Why did I approve this? Why am I doing this? So again, the expenses, if they're not willing and able to either get reduced expenses, the bowling alley for free, highly discounted catering, or they're willing to cut the check themselves, especially if they're a board member, they can, like I said, with us, they can pay their vendor fees directly out of ticket sales and donations. So if it's a smaller event, volunteer-led event that might be bringing in $5,000, it's a new event that you've never done before, and all you have to do is just show up for it. And they might have $1,000 worth of expenses that they may pay out of their ticket sales and donations, but you just now walked home with a check for $4,000 for the nonprofit that you otherwise never would have had. Multiply that times 10 every year. If you do 10 volunteer-led events, it's not a small amount, and all you have to do is really show up. So again, staff doesn't need to do the heavy lifting, and it creates strategic opportunities for new donors to support your mission. Can you tell the theme here? new donors, new donors, new donors, new money, new money, new money. So when to say yes? When you're guaranteed fundraising profit of a mutually agreed dollar amount. Okay, so you need to agree with this person who's coming to you saying, I want to do the singer-songwriter night. Fantastic. What kind of profit? Notice keyword there, it's bolded, profit. The net. What can we bring home to the nonprofit at the end of the day? Mutually agree to that dollar amount as a goal with that volunteer. Make certain that the volunteer personally aligns with your mission, that they're not just doing this for, because they have to, because of their work obligation, that they really are passionate about it. Make certain that the event itself, the theme, aligns with your mission. As we went through that list of my top 20, there are probably some that you shook your head no, saying that would never work for us, or that's just not in alignment with what we would do. Fair enough. Focus on those that do. Again, little to no staff time required. You've got to, in a friendly way, clunk that volunteer organizer over the head saying, okay, this really is about you. I'm going to have oversight from the financial perspective and all that, but we have no time. We're a small staff. We have no time to help you with this event. You have to say those words to them. But meanwhile, as you say that, then you do want to be able to show up at the event, and you want to be able to share the mission, whether it's the executive, if you're the development director, executive director, or sometimes what's even better, so just like at your galas, rather than a staff member, but if you go with someone who has benefited from the mission of your nonprofit, have them share, how they've benefited from all the hard work that you all do. And have the Kleenex boxes sitting around if it's the backyard barbecue or that singer-songwriter night at a coffee house or wherever. Have some Kleenex ready and have the mobile phones ready to accept one-time donations and monthly recurring donations right there on the spot. Assuming that the first event goes well, get the commitment from that volunteer that they're willing to do more. The new client that I mentioned earlier during the dinner series, this has been happening for decades. They have not all the same folks who were putting on dinners 20 years ago are still on board today, but they have people who will, do an event, do a dinner every single year. They can just count on them to do an event every single year. Now, when to say, let me think about this first before I say yes. There's something to be said about just if it doesn't feel right. Listen to your gut. I know that sounds funny to say, but listen to your gut. If your gut is saying there's just not something right here, put it on hold a bit. Get to know that person better first. The second bullet is probably the most important one, and you'll be able to get a feel for this. This is just sensing people. The volunteer is looking to build an audience by leveraging your brand. And so you've got a great brand. Everyone loves what you do. You're helping children. You're helping animals. You're the list goes on. All the key areas that, who wouldn't support that, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, if they have a kind of a parochial interest of why this is going to benefit them personally or their business or some sort, be careful with that. Get a feel for people. If they don't have fundraising goals affiliated with the event, if they're just saying, yeah, I'm going to throw this event on, but I have no goal. No, we'll see what we do. Run for the hills. They need to quantify it, qualify it, and quantify it. If they just lack effective communication skills, if they can't effectively communicate the mission for this specific volunteer-led event, and if they can't communicate financial goals, that's a problem. Put them on hold for a bit. You may not want to say no, but maybe you say not now. If they will not grant you oversight, into myRollCall or, Eventbrite, what have you, whatever they're using, if they don't give you an account to sign in and have oversight, run for the hills. You need to have that oversight. Again, you do not need to be working on the event. You do not need to be procuring. If they're doing a little mini silent auction, you shouldn't have any input in terms of the procurement or anything like that, but you sure do need to have oversight. And if they say, no, we've got it covered, I know what your mission is, and I'm good. I'm going to talk about the mission and the nonprofit, and we don't need you there. We don't need to, or you can come, but we really just don't need you to speak. Again, run for the hills. This is your opportunity. You need to have the opportunity to speak at the event, or have someone, a beneficiary of the work that you do, speak on your behalf. Technology is your friend. Knowledge is power, and it is all about tracking the data. These are new, can I say it yet again? New donors, new money, new donors, new money coming in. It's going to come in through, whether hopefully you're using myRollCall, but or your volunteer organizers are using myRollCall. But if not us, they're going to be using Eventbrite or what have you. You need to be able to integrate, download, and upload that data into, in this case, we're with our friends at Virtuous, so it needs to go into Virtuous. This is a great way to expand that wheel hub of data that is housed in Virtuous. They are your wheel hub. This is one more spoke on that wheel hub, okay? So ask the volunteer organizer to not only use event software, but make certain that it's the right fit for them. Because if they're getting some, great deal on something that just isn't really pertinent, or as you maybe noticed that I did not mention that, some of my top favorite events are not necessarily peer-to-peer events. They're great events. myRollCall, out of disclosure, we don't do them. I like to joke that we do great events if we don't do events if it's including running shoes, bicycles, and anything really healthy, I like to joke. But if it includes some good food and perhaps some imbibing and some beer and wine, count us in. That's where we come in. So there are other companies out there, software. If it is a run that your volunteer organizer is managing, then for sure have them use a software that is adapted for peer-to-peer fundraising, where there's that little bit of competition among the peers who are running, biking, etc. Okay, so you never want to do an event, even a small volunteer-led event. You do not want to do an event without using software. You just don't. We've come a long way since Excel spreadsheets. So use some software. It's very affordable, and it's worth doing. As I've mentioned many times already, make sure you have the oversight to that software, and make certain that you have the ability that the volunteer organizer can pay the event fees, as well as one thing I should add here is that you can, at the event level at least, be able to pass along those our fee, as or whichever software that you're using, as well as any credit card processing fees to the donors, and have the ability to require that nonprofit approval for any and all of this. You're still in charge. You have that oversight. You're the boss, not them. You are the boss. Creating your third-party event policy. At the end here, I'm going to show you, we have a bit of a toolkit online. I'm going to show that to you where that is, but you can create your own. And it's what we have out on our site is basically a means for which it's a template for you to create your own policy. Create the set of requirements for the volunteer organizers. Create a set of requirements for the event itself, what it must meet, including those financials that we talked about, as well as any theme, any legality, any risk. You don't want to take on any of that. That is up to that individual. What's legal and what's not. I'm not an attorney, nor am I an accountant, so you want to have this in place. Especially, if you do one or two per year, you might be able to get by perhaps, but your CPA and your attorney would probably raise an eyebrow, and he or she's going to say, let's get something in writing here. Let's get a policy in place if you're really going to start doing quite a few third-party volunteer-led events. Create those measurements and evaluations for your third-party events. It's a checklist, and it's all online. Like I said, we've got a full set of an example and a template. It's a great checklist for you to go through to make certain that you have everything in place for your volunteer organizers and that you're vetting them. And identify prospects to be volunteer organizers. You may have one or two in mind today, but I'll guarantee you that as you grow and expand and you start thinking, gosh, who attends the gala that is just such a cheerleader that might do an event? Have a response plan in place for incoming third-party inquiries. Have it ready to go. Have it out on your website over time of here is our policy, here's our checklist, here's where you sign off. Literally, have them, your attorney is probably going to advise that you even have them sign off on a bit of a disclosure, or an agreement saying, they are removing you from any liability, et cetera, the nonprofit from the liability, from anything that could happen at their home and that kind of thing. So I'm not here to say that, third-party events, they're super, super easy, nothing to worry about. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you want to have this in place, but you can easily bring in tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars per year through third-party events. So it's worth doing. And once you get that in place, you're pretty much set to go, getting your policies in place and working with your CPA and with your, and with, most importantly, your attorney. So the top 3 reasons for third-party events: you're going to raise more money, pure and simple. And that's what I don't want to make it sound like that's what it's all about, but that is what's driving you being able to do the good work that you're doing. Expand your base of donors and evangelists across your region, your city, your region. But that might end up, geographically, it could be across the country. It could be across the world. You might have supporters who are monthly donors now because they attended a third-party event hosted by a board member and of yours, and this person happened to be in town and attended the pool party, and then flew back, to Italy where they live, but they are going ahead and, they've got their credit card on file and they've become a monthly member of your nonprofit. Fantastic. Expand your social impact within your community. We haven't really talked a lot about that, but the fact that it really does expand not only the means in which you can expand the work of your mission, but the actual direct result. The social return on investment, not only of all the hard work that you're doing, but also of these third-party organizers and their donors, their new guests, their donors. You're expanding that social impact. You're expanding social innovation. You're expanding your social return on investment, their social return on investment. And that's really critical. And that's what I have. I hope there are some questions here. So let's open it up here, David. And
yeah. Well, thank you, Brian. And yes, folks, stick around because we are going to head into the question and answer session. So just a quick reminder, at the bottom, the Q&A box, you can click there, post your questions, and we'll start going through them now. I'll give everyone a minute to kind of get that done. And wanted to just say at first, we're super thankful to have myRollCall on today. We love, at Virtuous, we love myRollCall because one, just the focus on ease of use, the focus especially though on serving nonprofits, right? Think Eventbrite easy, but focused on what you do every day. Having specific focus is so important today, so you don't feel like you have to have a generic approach. And we also love too, just our big mission at Virtuous is we want to see the donor as a whole person. They have so much more to give, right? And this, especially with volunteer-led events, gives them an opportunity to give in more ways. Just engage them. They want to be a part of something. They want to be all about your cause in multiple ways. So we love that they can do this way. So again, Q&A box, click there. I will actually kick us off with the first question for you, Brian. And it really is, as folks are kind of thinking about this, getting interested, what would you say is a good suggestion for how do you test this for the first time? What's a good, safe approach to kind of dip your toe in the water, see if this works? Like, what would you encourage folks to think about? Hey, if I'm just starting to do this, maybe some keys there.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And testing, you brought up a good point. Test beta, do 1 or 2 before you expand to committing to doing more every year. my best suggestion is there is someone within your board. The board, they're automatically vetted. They're inherently vetted, I should say. They're built-in cheerleaders for your mission. You know them, you trust them. So tap your board. Get one person on your board to commit to doing an event in the next 6 months. I encourage everyone on this call right now to, in your next board meeting, say, we want to put our toes in the water for third-party volunteer-led events, and who better than you guys, our board. So who here would be willing to do, put on an event, and then talk about it, cover what we talked about today, that prove to them that you know what you're doing, and that, you're because you're asking them to do an event, that you're taking this very seriously. You want to get some key learnings from this first event, third-party event, and then you may want to expand it beyond. And I'm not suggesting that, not every nonprofit is like the prospective new client that we're bringing in with, I want to say it's 100, member dinner series. Most folks are not that. If you do 10 a year, that might be the right fit for you. You might be doing 2 larger third-party events. Some of these third-party events, by the way, we have one recently that was a golf tournament put on by a volunteer. Her father had passed away from a disease and it was benefiting the foundation, supporting research into this horrible disease. And this little golf tournament that she thought was going to bring in a few $1,000s ended up bringing in more than $40,000. So you just never know. So I'm kind of rambling, but my answer is a board member.
That's great. We actually had a little note coming through the chat during that as well from Sonia that said that her board is actually pretty reluctant and really opposed to fundraising, and she needs help. And so, Brian, what would you even say to Sonia if they might have a reluctant board there?
Yeah, that's a long-term solution, that you need to, as people off-board the board and you begin to onboard some new board members, I would just start setting that it is a prerequisite. It is part of their role and responsibility. I've never been on a board where there's not a fiduciary responsibility to fundraise. For some folks who are very moneyed, that just means cutting a check. But for most of us, that's not the case. And you're cutting a check, and you are bringing your friends to the gala, and you're buying a table, and you might be then throwing an event. So I think in the short term, she's kind of got a tough one there. But in the long term, as people start leaving the board, make certain that, that's a whole nother webinar on board. And I'm not the person for that, but that might be, I don't know if Virtuous has done that, David, but that's a great question that's a whole nother webinar on how to have a very effective and engaged and fundraising board.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sonia, that's a fundamental question, I think, on just your board makeup. And we've got some great webinars we'll share with you specifically afterwards on just how to get your board on board with fundraising. But, ultimately, we believe that fundraising is not a necessary evil. It's a wonderful part of the entire organization. And ultimately, you're unlocking the generosity for people who care deeply about what you're doing. And it's more than money. It's lending their whole selves. So we can send some more info there. We have a question, though, from Jen, talking really about millennials, right? If they prefer to donate in person, how do we get them off of social media to come to an event and open their wallets? Like, how do we get them off the couch?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question, because here's the other catch-22. You get them there, and then there are some software packages that then put the bidding, for the silent auction or the live auction. These are for, larger events, your galas and the like. And then you put it in the hands of the guests, and then their heads are buried in the phones and iPads all night long, and not listening to the mission, and not engaging with other donors, and not listening to the story of the person next to them who benefited from the mission of the nonprofit 20 years ago and just donated $10,000 because they've got their life pulled around, and all that kind of stuff. Simply because they have their heads buried in the iPhone or iPad. And so I'm here to say that, we we are a mobile platform. But we put it in the hands of the staff folks and the volunteers. And so you're not going to have the millennials with their heads in their phones looking at what they just bid on their, if it's a silent auction, a small silent auction at your volunteer-led event, they're not going to have their heads buried in their iPhones looking at whether or not they won the bid with us. And I would encourage that. Now, that's not to say that they're not going to be checking their email, but to get them there, it does have to be engaging, and it has to be something about, it has to be two things. One, as we talked about earlier, millennials really care a lot about the mission of not only the nonprofits to whom they're donating, but also even the companies that they work for. And so again, if it's a company led, if it's at their company, it just all has to fit nicely within their personal mission, and your mission needs to be in line. So I would work with your marketing person. Or, if you don't have a marketing person, work with a consultant on an hourly basis to target those millennials who fit, within the mission. If it's working with animals, then work with the millennials who are donating or, and spending time with the shelters and the like and things like that. And you can reach out to those folks. You can find them on Twitter and Facebook and the like. So get a strategy in place. And then once you get them there, you just need to keep them engaged in a fun activity, like all of us. It's not just the millennials. We all want to be entertained. And we all want to be seen giving. Do you know that 87% of us want to be seen giving? And that's true with the millennials as well as those of us who are a little bit older. Only 13% of us want to be anonymous, whether that is at a physical event or online. So, get the millennials there. It's all about the mission. It's all about the passion for the millennials.
Yeah, no, I agree, Brian. One of the things that we see is just millennials especially want to have a close connection with the impact. So making sure that you're being very conscious of how you are communicating the impact that they're having, bringing them as close to that as possible, not arm's length, just a donation is all we need. Really engaging.
Transparency. I didn't use the word transparency, but you just brought it up basically, David. It's transparent. Millennials need to see transparency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. We've got another question here from Leanna that says, really, when we're talking about community events and partner events, we're talking about Spirit Night, local restaurant, right? Local ice cream shop. A lot of these, right, can become fun, but they might not have a huge return. So how do we make sure we don't spread our staff really thin? Because, some of these folks might have good intentions of doing fun events, but making sure that that focuses on return. And so how do we make sure that balance of saying yes, but also making sure that we're focusing on return?
Well, it's getting all of that in writing up front. And it's perfect segue. I'm going to click here on the, we have our whole guideline, it's a template for you to create it. And so for your volunteers, you can, visit the webpage, you can download the PDF, and it's getting it, it's highlights, getting everything all lined up in place in advance, talking about, what are our goals? And if the dollar amount, using her example, if the dollar amount is just simply too low and it's not worth it, you need to learn to say no in a really friendly way. It just doesn't fit for us at this time. Until you never want to say it's not worth our time, but they'll understand that for them to put on this event with your full support, moral support, and oversight. Again, you're not going to be, you should not be lifting a finger with the event itself, other than just showing up. But if you're not getting what you need, then say no in a very friendly way. It's tough to say no to people who want to help you. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But you can do it and give them means in which what it would take for you to say yes. And that usually is, a financial commitment, reduced. I go back to the bowling tournaments. Gosh, I thought bowling tournaments would, a couple of years ago when we started kicking things off and we're getting these bowling tournaments in, and I have to say, I love them. I think they're a great idea, but I will never support a bowling tournament ever again with a volunteer-led event unless they are getting the time and the lanes donated or highly, highly, highly discounted, because it's a huge dollar amount. And so then they put on this volunteer-led event, and then it doesn't bring in enough money. But to your point of the person asking the question, it was a lot of fun, but the mission, the nonprofit didn't benefit. And that's the whole goal at the end of the day, And so if you want to just go bowling, go bowling. You don't have to make it a, quote, fundraiser for the nonprofit if it doesn't make any money. So have that all in writing. Use this template. I think we've done a pretty nice job of lining things up here for the volunteers. And then there's also for the nonprofit staff as well. So everything we've talked about here, but more including the checklists and literally down, 4 to 6 months before, 3 months before, 1 week before. And by the way, we're more than happy to jump on a demo with you and or any of your volunteer organizers, prospective organizers, to show them the software, give them a little tutorial so that they get the warm fuzzy that they need.
Yeah, and I like what you said there, Brian. Find a way to say yes. Maybe it's a no to this specific event, and ultimately sharing, hey, we have a big vision for this, and we care. We're so excited that you care about this just as much. But here's a better way, maybe with your skills or the timing or how this works. Find a different way to say yes. Ultimately knowing that, hey, we both want the same thing. So let's put you where you're best right now. And Brian, could you do you mind letting folks know again, where can they find this guide? It looks like it's on your website. Would you maybe just point
It is under Learn More and Third-Party Fundraising.
That's great. That's great.
So Learn More, and it's myRollCall, not just roll call. Roll call is you'll go there and you'll think, oh my gosh, where did I land? It's a political organization. So myRollCall, and then Learn More, Third-Party Fundraising.
That's great. Okay, we have one last question, and I'll actually be able to answer this. Question is about, does myRollCall integrate with Virtuous? So the answer is coming soon. Right now, we're super excited about our partnership. Got things kicked off here with this webinar. Wanted to share a lot of information, and then we are growing this together. Right now, currently, it's very easy to grab that CSV file, import that into Virtuous. What we'll be building direct integrations here coming soon. So we're excited for that, and great question. Okay, guys, that is the last question for the day. Thank you so much. Again, this will be delivered and emailed for the recording and the slides. Brian, I appreciate it. You guys, just so much great information today. Really happy to have you on.
Well, it was my pleasure. And thanks, everybody, for being on the call. We look forward to working with you. And please do not hesitate to reach out to David, me, both of us. We're happy to jump on some mutual demos and show you what we have to help you raise more funds.
Absolutely. All right, guys, have a great day. Thanks again, Brian. We'll talk soon, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you.